So, greetings, Earthlings. I got to get this video done because I skipped a day not riding my bicycle yesterday, and I got to get on one today. Either hit the road or get on my Nordic track bike there behind me. Get about an hour in, feel great. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so it's kind of weird. Anyway, today, I think I got my microphone working. I'm the smartest guy in the room. We'll see. Anywho, today I wanted to talk to you about Americans fugitive doing a south of the border run to evade prosecution. I'm going to give you three anecdotal episodes that I know about, give you my short opinion, and solicit comments from you on what you think about the entire issue and whether or not something should be done about it. So, the first episode is a woman. Well, first off, let me go back and tell you about how I live down here. We're in what's called euphemistically a resort. it's, it's being kind, but it's a compound that we're in. It's gated, it's walled, concertina wire, cameras all over the place. Just for security at night, the gates get closed so no one can come in. And really, it's very safe even without that. But we get some transients off the railroad up the ways that will, man, they're hungry. They're looking for something to sustain their lives. So it's a pretty safe community, but there's only 15 or so of us in here, and um, only a few of us are full time. The others are weekend warriors, if you will, not here all that often. Anyway, a couple years ago, a woman about 59 years old uh, came in with her motorhome in a car and moved in. I'm always happy to see new people and always looking for an opportunity to meet and befriend someone, help if I can. Been down here for a while, so I kind of know the ins and outs, and made an attempt to befriend her too. In my initial conversation with her, she told me that she had been living at another resort, but they had asked her to move on, and it appears she'd been asked to move on from several other places before. Well, that's none of my business. That's her thing. Whatever took place, took place. Um, when I asked what she was doing to support herself, there wasn't really a clear answer except that she was doing maybe a little house sitting, making pastries, uh, hard scrabble kind of work. Didn't really have an income. So at the time, I wasn't retired. I was traveling back and forth to Phoenix, and I had two dogs here, which is a big reason why I was even in Mexico, because I had a nice, safe place for my dogs so that I can go around doing my work. And I offered her an opportunity to make some money by watching my dogs. Come over here, feed them, walk them. And normally, the maintenance guy, the manager here, Jose, he comes by every day, check to make sure I'm alive, and feeds the dogs, fed them because they're gone now, watered them, make sure they were okay. They loved him a lot, but this was an opportunity to maybe help this woman out, and so we did that. But as time went on, um, this, some bizarre behaviors took place. We had a very nice neighbor who wasn't here all that often. She was a soft touch for anyone. She was so nice. She's passed on too. Um, but this new neighbor ingratiated herself with our neighbor and got her to hook up internet, which she didn't need. Um, did the house sitting thing for her. And as it turned out, was drinking all the alcohol and the water and using up all the gas, even throwing parties in this woman's house. And then it started coming out that the other places that she was house sitting for, she was using their water, drinking their booze, using their gas. So it was one series of episodes after another. And you know what? I've got this instinct. I guess I don't know if it comes from being a private investigator for so long or the instinct has always been there, but something told me something wasn't right. And if before I let this woman in my house, I need to check her out. And so I did. I did a background check on her. Come to find out, she had warrants for her arrest up in, we'll just say the north part of Arizona. Misdemeanors, no big deals, but they were for um, theft issues. If I were to analyze the report, it appears that she had um, been staying on somebody's property using their electricity without permission. There were trash issues. Apparently, she was dumping illegally. Um, and then, as it turns out, as I looked a little bit more into it, she went down, bought a motorhome, didn't pay for it, bought a car, didn't pay for it, and then headed south of the border. Generally, those are none of my business things. However, if I'm going to let somebody into my house, uh, I need to know and decided that this probably wasn't going to be a good situation to have her close to me. Additionally, she started displaying antisocial behaviors. This is a pretty small community, man. I mean, in every neighborhood, there's a weirdo or two. Maybe I'm that one, but uh, she was becoming more and more antisocial, hostile, and her little area that her trailer was in, she started accumulating junk and crap, and it was starting to pile up outside. We encouraged her to move on, and she did. Thank goodness, because that could have turned into a, a bad scene. She wound up moving up to another park that's got a lot of people up there. The neighbors refer to her as the bipolar bitch. Yeah, well, that's too bad because she's not here, and that's a very good thing. Now, the issue with that is at one point in time, she had gotten involved in a little business deal and made some money. You got to understand about misdemeanors. They're usually under $1,000. It's if you're a first time offender, you're not going to go to jail. You just get a lawyer, you negotiate the deal, you make restitution. It's not a big deal. And every jurisdiction has an area that they're not going to extradite from. So typically, a municipal judge, a justice court judge, if you're if you're not going to take responsibility for your actions, they're going to issue an arrest warrant. And if you get popped somewhere, say in Arizona, that jurisdiction's going to call up to North Arizona, where she was from, and say, hey, we've got her down here. Do you want her? They're going to look at it and say, well, she's outside of our area. Um, no, we don't want her. Just leave her here. And then after a few days, that jurisdiction that arrested her will release her. Or if she's in the area that they will extradite, they'll come and get her. Then that sheriff's department will come down and grab her up and bring her into court. That you know the police, law enforcement, they work for the public. They're not going to spend the public's money injudiciously by going down and grabbing somebody up for a humbug, a misdemeanor. What's a little puzzling about it is that the money that she made down here, she could have easily taken care of that problem up there, but chose not to. I don't know why. Maybe fear, who knows? Now, the likelihood of her crossing into the United States unmolested was probably pretty good. I mean, it's a misdemeanor. It's probably not going to show up on the NCIC crime database. Typically, when the courts issue a warrant, there will be a section on there on whether or not they place it on the NCIC, and they don't do that for misdemeanors. Do it for felonies, hard felonies. So she probably could have gone back up there unmolested, no fuss, no muss, dealt with her problem and didn't. Well, as it turns out now, she's got failure to appear warrants also. It's a it's a no-brainer, man. Just go take care of your business. You'll be in and out and no problems, but chooses not to do that. And that speaks to a level of entitlement that probably isn't conducive to being a good neighbor. Is this somebody that you want around you? Is it just a matter of time before she winds up causing chaos in your life, using your stuff up? People without a visible means of support can only support themselves by riding on somebody's back, from stealing from them. So I'd like to hear whether you think this is somebody that you want around you, you should have around you. What would you do about it? We got her out of here. And that's not a pleasant story. The the second story I'm going to tell you about is a guy that moved in here, working man, plumber, had his own truck, and it became pretty clear, as happens in areas that are tourist related, he had a drinking problem. And I was asked by park management or the owner to run a background check on him, and I did. And as it turns out, multiple arrests for DUI, spent 8 years in prison for DUI. His criminal history showed that not only would he get drunk and get DUIs, but he'd hit vehicles and then take off. And as it appeared that he had just recently been indicted for another extreme DUI and hit and run. And he knew that he was going to be going back to prison for at least another 8 years, probably. So decided to take it on the lam and head down south of the border and stayed here uh, for a while until one of his drunken episodes. He took a shovel to one of the neighbors, and I guess that was the catalyst for the owner of the resort to finally say, "Look, he's got to go." And he did, and he left peaceably at that particular point in time. My understanding is that his truck is now broken down, so he doesn't really have an ability to make a living. What do you think he's going to do to sustain himself down here? A lot of these guys, when they get deported or they're Americans and they're homeless down here, they stand over at OXXO begging for money. OXXO's like a 7-Eleven. They beg for money, and up in the United States and here too, if you don't have a visible means of support, you're going to burglarize, steal, you're going to do all kinds of stuff. I don't know if that's what he's doing or not, but um, do you take offense to someone like that being in your community? There's a saying that goes that you can reliably predict the future by past recent relevant behavior. While America and probably most of the world is very forgiving, you can reinvent yourself as many times as you want to. In order to successfully do that, you've got to embrace who you are and the issues that you have, and resolve to fix those things so they just don't keep happening to you over and over and over again. Like I said the other night, if you've got borderline bipolar issues, borderline personality disorders up in the United States, you're going to bring them right down here to Mexico or the Philippines or any other place. You don't you don't just change locations and hope that your problems are going to be solved. You have to take an assertive effort to make some changes in your life. You're going to go through 4 or 5 divorces and blame them all on the other person when it's your issue. So, my question to you is this someone that you want around you? Would you be proactive at trying to get them away from you? What do you think your responsibilities are? Because this is a guy that a lot of people would just say, oh, he's a great guy, he's just a drunk. All that's true until he hits and kills somebody. Already know that he's gone to prison for extreme DUIs. We already know that he hits things and runs off. These are the guys that wind up hitting and killing someone, and obviously running. So, when do you take a proactive approach at keeping them away from you? What do you do? Well, unless it's a very heinous crime like murder, sex crimes, where law enforcement has a a bull be on the lookout and an NCIC, they're not going to send marshals down here to scoop up somebody that has DUI issues. That's somebody else's problem now. That's Mexico's problem now. If he tries to cross the border, then they're going to get him and take him up there and he'll wind up going to prison. But you're not going to be able to call somebody in the county level and say, hey, your guy's down here. Can you come and get him? They're not going to do it. What do you do? And finally, the last episode is a realtor down here who should know better, but allowed someone that she knew had problems in the United States to move into one of her rental properties up towards Troya Bay. Realtors got to go through a lot of education, continuing education classes that makes them aware of their responsibilities and liabilities. And certainly, if you're going to rent to someone or you're going to do business with someone, you have an obligation to do due diligence to make sure that they are not a threat to you or to the community, uh, or you're going to be held liable for not doing that due diligence. Sometimes insurance claims will deny you. Um, but this wasn't a stupid person. This was a person who wanted to get somebody in their rental unit. And as it turns out, he was on the run from, I guess it was the parole violation, which means, of course, that he'd been in prison and was released and decided to go south of the border without a visible means of support. Turns out that he was burglarizing, stealing, took their vehicle, was causing all kinds of chaos. The way the authorities down here dealt with it was instead of going through the lengthy court process of having someone extradited, they just grabbed him up because he was in violation of immigration rules and took him up to the border, and he was able to get back in the United States. Why is that? Because when I looked at the arrest warrant, clearly said that it was on the NCIC, but the courts had spelled his name wrong. So when he's going up to the border, they're looking under his real name and it's not coming up on the NCIC. He was able to get right back up into the United States, where he turned around and came back and started creating more chaos. Sometimes the police down here will use extrajudicial measures to enforce what they want, which is to get out of here, don't do crimes. You'll get a good beating and then returned up to the United States. They'll escort you up there and make sure you go back into the United States. I haven't heard about this guy for a while, so I'm guessing that he got taken care of, taken back up to the border, and finally the parole department in California had him brought back and maybe incarcerated. The problem, of course, is going to be he'll be back. The guy, when he gets out, he's going to be back. California's real liberal about letting people go. And so, my question to you is, should she have let this guy in? My answer is no. You're just inviting problems. Remember, you can predict the future. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. Do you get mad at her? Do you get mad at him? What do you do proactively to make sure these people don't come into your neighborhood? What do you do to get rid of them? Do you do anything at all? Is it live and let live? It's not my problem. Well, it's going to be your problem. It's going to be an issue um, for you. So let me know your comments. Let me know what you think. There's absolutely no reason to think that these people aren't also going to the Philippines or Thailand or whatever. Mexico does not have the ability to tap into the United States law enforcement systems. Mexico doesn't know if you're on the lam. They don't know if you've been to prison. They don't know any of those things. When you go up to the consulate, you get your hand scanned when you're trying to get a visa. They're not scanning you to see if you have a criminal history. They're putting you in the system for Mexico, not the United States. But the worst thing you can do is allow law enforcement in Mexico access to the criminal database up in the United States. And the only place I know that really does it is Canada. They are allowed in so they can find out who's coming into their territories. Anyway, I'd like to know your thoughts on it. Should we be concerned about fugitives from justice coming down south of the border or going to the Philippines or going to Thailand? What would you do about it, short term and long term? And that's all I got to say. I've got to get on my bike.